David, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here and lovely to meet you and your audience.
Yeah, thank you. You and I had an opportunity just to connect, and you shared that you've been in Cleveland in February in the winter, which is an interesting time to have come here.
As somebody who was born in Texas and raised in Louisiana, and I was living in Florida at the time, it was a little bit of a shock because snow for me growing up was this magical few days that got you out of school and you went and played and everything shut down. And it was just wonderful little snippet. And that was it. And so to live in it for an extended period and drive in it and deal with it going to work every day was a whole different experience. I cherish it nonetheless because all of our experiences have value, and the more we appreciate them, the more we see the value. So I love it. I love that I know
Absolutely.
what it's like.
Yes. And you have had an interesting career, an interesting journey in life. And you shared with me is that as your business has continued to evolve, one of the things that you've always done, and that's been such a huge part of your life, is channeling. So, for those that maybe don't know what that is or aren't familiar with what you channel and what that looks like, do you mind just sharing a little bit more about that?
Certainly. Channeling is where you're tapping into something that you believe is beyond your human consciousness. And we all do a version of this in our own way, meaning there is something to us, and it depends on what your belief system is because no one's belief system is wrong. But there is an essence that we carry that is beyond just our 3D physical existence. And some people believe in that and some people don't. I think that's fine either way. But when you channel, you are tapping into consciousness that is beyond your physical being, beyond your mind, or at least you believe that it is. And what I found is that when I was very, very young, I would have all of these clarity just drop into my mind that was well beyond what I was learning in my home environment. And I didn't really understand what that was for a very long time. But I understood conscious creation. That's what I call conscious creation. Some people call it law of attraction. I understood that we were creating our own reality by the time I was 14. And I started working on creating my reality. Now, that didn't mean that I brought perfection to my life, not at all, but I was able to achieve an experience. And if you like to use the term manifest a lot of things in my life that on paper shouldn't have. I've always beat the odds in life in lots of ways. And I did that all the way into my early 40s. And I grew up in a very impoverished environment. And when you grow up poor, you think money and material things is the answer to everything. And it took me until I was 40, 41 to achieve all of that and look around and realize, okay, there's more than just this. These things are nice, but there's more than just this. What else is there? And I decided at that point to listen to all the psychics I had visited to figure out why I was getting all this information that seemed to be different than what a lot of people were getting. And I'd already been told that I was a channel, and I was really freaked out by that. I didn't want any part of it. I was a real mainstream kind of guy, at least outwardly, and I judged it and I kept it hidden. I decided to go deeper into that and listen to everything it was offering, not just the how do I get a nicer car and a bigger house and all of that sort of thing. And I did that around 41. I started meditating. I started doing more quote unquote spiritual things. And early on in my meditation, I had what I now call a Kundalini awakening. I had no idea what that was when it happened. This energy erupted at the base of my spine. It electrified me. It electrifies me to this day. And this was around 2010. And after that happened, my life changed profoundly. And more of this information became clear to me. I realized that the conscious creation stuff is wonderful, but it applies to everything, not just money and material things. And how do I really lean into the study of that? And I spent the better part of the decade of my 40s really doing that. And it became such a profound shift for me that in my late 40s, I decided I was going to start a podcast and I was just going to start sharing this information. I had taught myself to write it and eventually taught myself how to speak it, meaning I just got out of my own way and allowed it to flow. And the first time I ever channeled publicly was on my podcast, the Stream of David podcast back in 2017. And you can still go back to this day, go back to our podcast. And it used to be called the Stream of David. And for a while it was called the Tya podcast. And now it's just David Strickel, the Stream. And you can hear the first channeling and it was rough, but it was the same message that we're getting today. And of course, now it's definitely more evolved and clearer, but the clarity that comes from that seems to be very helpful for other people. And it's been helpful for myself. And we have always said it's okay to be skeptical of anything, but if you open yourself up to what is being offered and apply it in your life, you will see it start to work right away. It's very evidential. And I always want to ensure that it's very evidential, that we're not sharing something that is some idea that you have to just believe is going to work at some point way down the road. There's some benefit years from now or afterlife or something like that. People want to know what's going to help them live a better life now.
Wow. How old you were the first time you heard these voices?
It wasn't really a voice, it was just a knowing. It sounds kind of silly. The first time I remember, my father left our house when I was 6, and so this was prior to that. I had to be 4 or 5 years old, and we were not wealthy people at all, and lower middle class, and somebody drove up that my parents knew, and they were driving this fancy car. I think it was a Lincoln, and this was the early '70s, and I remember being so impressed. I was just blown away. Little boys love cars, and I love
Yeah.
cars, and I love fancy buttons, and I'd never seen a sunroof before in a car, and it was just so cool. Like, this car is so cool and shiny and big and everything that a car was supposed to be back then. And as she drove away, I remember my parents saying, "Oh, we'll never have that. And what did she do to get that?" And all of that sort of normal talk that you might hear in a situation like that. And I remember thinking, don't listen to them. That's not true. I can have that if I want.
Oh, okay. So it was more like a knowing, like a drop in of a feeling, like
The
a certain.
drop-in of a knowing, and then if, fast forward to age 14, and of course, this just continued, and I was a very adult-like, almost cynical little kid because of it, and by the time I was 14, I remember telling my older brother that even though we were poor, that we didn't have to be that. We could just simply start believing that we were something different, and we would just become something different. And he thought I was crazy and probably still does. And by the time I was in high school, I looked like one of the rich kids. I had a brand new car and fancy clothes and all those things. I manifested all the stuff. And so I knew that it worked. And so I just kept doubling down. I never had a formal education. I started my own real estate development company in 19 with no money and moved through that experience. And then I got into the corporate world and moved up the ladder very quickly, doing things in a very unconventional way every single time. And I always got results. So people promoted me because I had results, even though I didn't have the education. And I ended up in a corporate position where you had to have an MBA to report to me,
Wow.
but I had a GED. I'm self-educated. I definitely have used the internet ever since it's been a thing to educate myself, but believing that you can and that you're worthy and that you belong is massive. And then I had to go through that all over again with channeling, believing that I can and that I'm worthy and that I belong. And that's been a wrestling match. Even it's pretty much detuned at this point completely. But even after I quit my corporate job in 2017 with no plan, I had a podcast and an unpublished book at that time, and I had no plan. I had no big bank of wealth. Even though I made a lot of money, I spent a lot of money. I just trusted that it was going to work out. And here we are. We're coming up on 9 years later. It has worked out
Yeah.
because I trusted.
I love that. And I'm really curious too. You said that you didn't want to be a channel when you started noticing that maybe you were different than other people. Was there anybody that you connected with initially that really encouraged you to open yourself up to this gift or to this? And I think you call the channel the stream. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I've always just said, think of it as a stream of consciousness. I've never got a gender or a human-like identity from it. I know a lot of people that channel will assign sort of a male name to it. And I joke that, the stream is non-binary. The stream is not a human. It's not human-like. It is source energy. We all have source energy in us. And I am able to receive it and articulate it in a way that it's beneficial if you choose to listen to it and give it power. So the way that I learned this is that I used to go to psychics quietly. I would never tell anybody in my professional life that I was going to psychics because by the time I was really deep into doing that, I was the buttoned up suit and tie executive. And I would go see psychics just trying to understand myself better. And one of the first experiences that I had is that I saw a woman in Casadega, Florida, which is a tiny little place, but it's a spiritual encampment that most people, it's not like Sedona. It's not commercialized at all. It's very private and very quiet. It's between Orlando and Daytona. I lived in Orlando at the time. And local people there told me to go see Hazel in the Pink House. And her name was Hazel Burley. I don't know if she's still with us or not. I have a feeling she's probably not. And Hazel Burley, it was a little pink house. And she shows up in this vintage Chanel outfit and this wig. It was just like the most magical experience, like something out of Willy Wonka. And she sits me down and right away, she's getting me to pick colors from these color chips. And I remember thinking, this is so weird. And then something washed over me and said, no, there's value here. Pay attention to this woman. This is real. This isn't smoke and mirrors. This is real. And I just got into it with her. And I don't even remember what all transpired, but I remember her saying, what's going on with you is that you're a channel and you are here to share a message with the world. And the more you get out of your own way and get out of your own fear, the more profound this message is going to be for yourself and any part of humanity that chooses it. So she tried to turn me on to Abraham Hicks. If you've heard of Abraham Hicks, most people have. And she handed me this big binder, and I remember it was purple and a gold ribbon, and there was a dove, and it said Abraham. And I remember judging it, thinking, okay, that's some Old Testament religious stuff that I grew up with that I don't want any part of. And she says, oh, you really need to do this. You need to listen. You are the same, and you can do all these things. And I just was really skeptical of it. And so I kept that hidden. And years later, I had moved from Florida to Seattle. And I won't go too deep into the story, but Abraham sort of landed on me in a very magical way, not for me to copy Abraham or anything like that, but for me to experience that in a way that I was no longer judging it and fearing it the way that I was. And so I've always thanked Esther Hicks' channeling of Abraham for making it not weird for me,
Yeah.
because I thought it was this weird thing. And now I don't. It's just very natural to me.
Yeah. When you said you channeled live on your podcast, did you channel for other people before that, before 2017?
No, there was nobody in my life that would want to hear it before
Wow.
that. And I was the only one into it. So I just started a podcast. I asked for a name. Hey, we've been talking all this time. Who are you? What are you? And I had gotten a name years ago of a spirit guide named Philip. And I was kind of holding on to Philip. And then I got clarity that, well, you needed to hear Philip at that time because that's what you were evolved enough to comprehend, that we were something that was like a human that was contacting you, but we're not. We are all consciousness. Every human has this, but you have a unique ability to share it in a way that will be beneficial to those that choose to pay attention to it. And I said, okay, well, what's your name? And the stream just popped in. It was just literally like stream of consciousness, the stream. And so I started a podcast called The Stream of David, which is interesting because I judged Abraham for sounding religious and people thought that
Right.
sounded religious. But
Yep.
I did it anyway. And I did it for a long time. We don't call it that anymore, but I used to. And everything just kind of took off from there. I did not have a job. I quit my corporate employment. I met somebody that taught me how to do a course. The course turned into the Tya Practice. Tya stands for Trust Your Abundance, because I've come to understand that trusting the universe is the most powerful thing we can possibly do. And the most difficult thing to do, our human created environment, I call the matrix.
Hmm.
The matrix promotes fear and judgment and comparison and all of these things that sort of keep us in line. And the matrix is not a terrible thing, but understanding what it is and what source is a very useful tool for any human to have. Because when you're operating in the matrix, you're playing by the rules of the matrix, and the matrix actually operates in opposition of universal law, because universal law is trust, believe. Well-being is provided from the universe, not from employment, not from marrying somebody or being born into the right family or any of the things that we believe. And everything that we believe in the matrix, like when we believe that someone that's born into a upper middle class or wealthy family is blessed, the stream is saying that's not true at all. And according to the universe, the one that projects into a very difficult circumstance is a more evolved stream of consciousness than a stream of consciousness that would choose ease. And that's why so often people do project into those situations where you think, gosh, they have everything going for them and they still mess their lives up. They develop drug habits, or they misspend their money, or they don't appreciate, or they act like spoiled brats, or whatever it is. They're creating that situation down the road for themselves so that they can expand consciousness through challenges. And that's the core of our message, is not law of attraction and conscious creation. Those things are part of it. But the bigger picture is we're here to expand consciousness through our challenges. And the more we realize that, the more we solve them. And the more we solve them, the more we expand and grow. And we can actually start solving these problems that we intend to solve as human beings in our lives and for all of us. Everything can be solved through this. So that's the core of the message.
I love that. During your first channeling on the podcast, so walk us through what that was like. So you have everything set up. You clearly have been receiving messages for a long time, most of your life at that point, but not done it publicly, not even done it for someone else. So what came through that day? And how did it come through for you? Because you weren't just feeling it or knowing it as you described it before, but now you had to articulate it for others to listen to. So what came through, and how have you refined that over time? Because I'm sure the first time must have felt at least a little unfamiliar, if not
Choppy.
uncomfortable.
It was very
Yeah.
the speech was very choppy. It took a lot of editing, and now I can speak it almost you know the difference between me and the stream when I channel, definitely,
Okay.
but I can communicate it now just like we're talking now. It's
Mhm.
different. It's a different vibe. It's a whole different vibe for sure, but in the beginning, it was slow and it was bits of information, and I had to piece it together in a podcast so you didn't have a lot of dead air. And the core of what we are teaching today has not changed. And that was offered in the very first, I call them transmissions now. The very first transmission from the stream was yes, law of attraction is real, but again, it's fallen back into the matrix where it's become a consumer. How do I get more things and more stuff? And it's not wrong. Things and stuff and money are all nice. There's no judgment about any of that. But we're still losing sight of the real gift in understanding conscious creation, which is solving big problems. Having more stuff isn't going to solve what's coming for humanity. And I'm not here to spin a conspiracy or instill fear. We are resetting humanity. We all know it. We all know that AI is going to reset our system of commerce, and our entire matrix is built on exchange commerce. So once AI is taking over more and more employment and our economics are shifting into some sort of a different type of value exchange, the matrix is going to want to hold on to that value exchange because it's still going to want something from us as human beings. And there is a unique aspect that we have that AI can't replace, which is emotion and vibration and
Yes.
source and all those things. I don't know that AI will ever replace that, certainly not anytime soon. And that will be harnessed yet again in the matrix, but we don't have to allow that to happen again. And that's the core of the message. There is a way out for all of us if we don't want to fall back into that exchange system where we have to exchange just for our basic well being the way that we do right now.
Yeah, we obviously, if you look around, turn on the news, look at any social media right now, there's so much that's happening in the world. And so, what has the stream been transmitting through you in terms of lessons of what we should pay attention to or what we should know right now?
The biggest thing that they share that you don't hear in a lot of other places, some that we don't have a monopoly on source. I'm not pretending like that for a minute, but a lot of us that channel still set up some guardrails around the channeling because there's still some religious aspects that are sort of guardrailing. And I think that's perfectly fine because they're meeting an audience that is there also and serving that audience. My intention is to take the guardrails down as much as possible, collapse my ego as much as possible. No fear. They will answer any question without fear, and they always have. And a lot of people have stated that they will answer questions that they don't hear other channels necessarily answering. And what that has produced, and here's the value of that, they are very clear that the more we focus on something in judgment, the more we are empowering it. And the more we empower something, the more that momentum builds. And we just refuse to stop judging certain things. And there's people out there that are stopping judging their bank account and figuring out how to change that situation. They're speaking on a more global scale. They're saying the leaders of our world who are in power understand very well that whether you love them or hate them, that you're empowering them. They wouldn't be where they are if they didn't understand how conscious creation works. Even if they don't look like benevolent spiritual teachers, they don't have to be. They understand, love me or hate me, you're focusing on me, you're giving me power. And there is evidence of that everywhere. The leaders that are loved and hated and really polarizing do very well. And they are the ones that are really making a lot of decisions that are impacting humanity right now. And as we move forward into this AI revolution, there's no coincidence that the people who own the technology are also wanting to own the media because they want to control the narrative. And you're starting to hear some of them talk about things. Well, yes, our AI is going to unemploy everyone. And when that happens, we're going to have a basic human income. And I think that it's very easy to slip into thinking, oh, wow, that sounds so nice. Doesn't it sound nice? A basic human income we don't want for anything? Well, we can have that right now. And we don't. There are people traveling on $500 million yachts while other people starve in the streets. And as much as I understand, we're all creating our reality and there's no wrong reality. And the stream even says the person starving in the streets is having an expansive journey, just like the person on the yacht. We shouldn't judge it. We shouldn't judge it. But that concept of we have this, you just let us give you a basic human income and everything's going to be okay. Well, that's not how creation really works. Not on a universal level. We have this exchange element. So we're going to fall back into this attention economy that we're already in. How do they get rich from our attention? They want us to pay attention to them. How do they get our attention? Fear and chaos. There's far more attention paid to fear and chaos than there are participants in the actual thing that's creating the fear and the chaos. So our message is way beyond how do I get a fancier car? You can use it for that if you want, but we really are focusing on let's think about making our lives better, absolutely, locally. And because we're a collective consciousness, we're all contributing to this matrix. We're all human beings. Every human on planet Earth is interconnected as a collective consciousness. We absolutely are. And even science has done experiments and proven that a thought can be had on one side of the planet and be had simultaneously on the other side that is new and unique. So science is even supporting this now. So if we are this collective consciousness and we've sort of taken ourselves out of that by paying attention to screens instead of each other, I don't think we have to give up the screens. I think screens allow us to have conversations like this, and you don't have to be in a specific place to hear the information, but we have to put it in its proper place and realize that AI will have a place. Technology has a place. We can't unring that bell. But the thing to really understand is what is the matrix without judging and fearing it, and what is universal law? Universal law is trust. Tya stands for trust your abundance, trust in your well-being. Trust that everything will work out, that you're here for a reason that is not just about comfort and joy, that a lot of our challenges have value. And I can tell you, Aneta, that I still spin out. I still have challenges. I'm not perfect. I on my podcast now, I don't channel at all. I only channel in my biweekly transmissions and in session work that I do. But on my podcast, it's me, the very imperfect human being, exploring what the stream is offering us. That's the place that you get that. And when I'm a guest with gracious hosts such as yourself, exploring what they're offering from a human perspective, because it's not easy to wiggle out of the matrix. And I'm out a lot of the time, and then I get drawn back into it. And then when I do, I see the equal result. I learn the lesson, I become a wiser version of myself in that process. And I'm not afraid to share it. And I'm never going to put myself out there as some perfect spiritual teacher that's got it all figured out and I'm crushing life in every single way. My life is really good. I live a very nice life where I do what I want to do all day, which is lovely. But we shouldn't be expecting perfection because we're
Yeah.
all going to age. We're all going to have health problems. We're all going to have this vibrational journey that's up and down. We are here for that. We don't solve that. We don't fix it. It's actually the meaning of life is the imperfection of life. The joyful things is just the chum that kind of gets us to go to the next thing.
Yeah. Well, so tell me in your own words, again, maybe for those that when they hear The Matrix, they think of the movie. And so that's sort of the context that people have. And when they think of source or stream or consciousness, maybe they have some preconceived notions. But if you could just provide it in the most basic terms, both like the matrix that we live in versus then what are we hearing if we're not living in a matrix? I guess I'm really curious. And then I'm also curious, you said sometimes you spin out. What are the things that you do for yourself in order to be that vessel, to be a channel so that you can receive the messages and that you can stay in alignment, in the right vibration versus allowing the world to just sort of take us off course sometimes?
Certainly. The best way to know what is source and what is the matrix. Source is appreciation of all things. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's bad. Nothing shouldn't exist. There's nothing wrong with our world. Our world is a workshop where source expands consciousness. And the way source expands is by creating a separation from itself, having the human experience where we have this thing that we call an ego, where we have preferences. There's things that we want to get up and do the next day and experience. There's a long list of those things. Those things keep us moving through a linear journey, or at least it's what's perceived that way. The challenges are really where we expand consciousness. Waking up and having a great day is a lovely thing, but you're not really expanding your consciousness as much as you do when everything falls apart. when the business falls apart or the money's gone or the relationship falls apart or you have an unwanted diagnosis or whatever it is, you fill in the blank, or a pandemic comes along and suddenly everything gets disrupted and challenged, moving through that experience into a solution or just having the experience period, that exists to expand consciousness. And so somehow we've created this matrix that teaches us that all of those unwanted things just shouldn't even exist. And anytime we're looking at something and saying that shouldn't exist, source is not in that. Source is sort of, if you just to use a metaphor, source is over there saying, nope, not going to go there. Appreciation of all things. You've all decided that death is wrong and that pain is bad. And you've just decided this. And you can get out of that matrix by understanding how programmed we are. Now, there's a difference between preference and judgment. And this is the key. Source is appreciation of all things. Anything other than that is the matrix. That's a very good way to just draw a line and say, when I'm in appreciation of all things and I'm breathing and I'm loving and I'm appreciating and there's no preference, it's just pure appreciation, you are source. You are the purest form of you that you can possibly be. And I promise you, I'm 58 now. In my 58 years, that source has always delivered well-being for me, even when it shouldn't have. It always has. And sometimes I get to the edge of the cliff where there's no money or there's no health or there's no this or there's no that. And I step forward and trust and it always works out. So that's the message. That's what source is. If you think about it, this is woven into religion. This is really where religion started. And then it all got, changed in different ways to create commerce and longevity and build audiences and all that. And I understand that. But the core is that trust in the universe. It's the same thing as have faith in God. It's the same
Right.
message. But it's just
Yeah.
without all the judgment and fear, and you need to fear this, and this bad thing is going to happen if you don't do certain things. Obviously, that's all been peppered in by humanity. That's the matrix. All of that is. And so the way to get there, yes, meditation. I like to talk about quiet contemplation instead of meditation because people put a lot of pressure on meditation. We did a lovely meditation before we came on, and that was great. We raised our vibe, we cleared our mind. We're having this fantastic interaction now because we set the intention. It works very well. We can do that anytime that we want, but we don't run in that high vibration space all the time. We get knocked out of it. And what I found is that the matrix exists. It's a collective human creation that's been well nurtured for a very, very long time. And we tend to slip into it when we move through what I call a low vibration period. But what I've discovered is the low vibration period is inevitable. Our vibration is going to shift. This is why some days we're higher for no particular reason. Some days we're lower. We are shifting vibrationally. That creates this friction that guarantees we're going to dip out of high vibration. We're going to manifest some problems, solve them, and expand. That's why we're here. So that is guaranteed. What doesn't have to be is the way we've been trained to react. Just because we drop into low vibration doesn't mean we have to go back into all of the fear and judgment and separation and comparison and polarization that the matrix has trained us to. That's the work. And it's work. I love the work, but am I finished? No. Do I think any human being that's breathing is finished? No, I don't think so. I don't think that at all. I think when we get finished with the matrix, we're done expanding.
Mhm.
But we can drop down into low vibration and not have the impact of the matrix. And we can detune that over time. And where I am now as a human is when I drop down in a low vibration, I have full awareness that I'm there, what it's about, and that I am not going to solve anything down there until I return myself higher. And I don't fear being down there anymore. Because the good news here is that there's a lot of things down there waiting for us to explore. And we've built these things over a lifetime of beliefs. I call that your vibrational basement. What's down there in the dark? That limiting belief about finance or that belief that you took on because your mother told you you're going to get fat if you ate too many potato chips and now you have a weight problem. All of that stuff is down there. And our lifetime's work is not going down there and completely cleansing the basement all at once. Our lifetime's work is slowly unpacking those things and exploring them, setting them free, and then noticing that your general vibration just travels higher and higher and higher as you do that. And that's what I do to channel. I am continually cleaning up my vibration, continually. And when I need to channel, when I have a live transmission that's set and date and people have paid to be there and they want to be in that experience, I know that I've got some work to do to prepare to be in that space. I can't just jump out of bed and say, I have to be on in 5 minutes and jump on. There's preparation that goes there. But because I've done a lot of unpacking of my basement, my general vibe is higher and it's easier for me to return to that space. I very rarely have a plummet, but when I do, the first thing I want to do is not get myself out of it. I want to find out why I'm there. What triggered me? What is this? Let me firewalk this. I'm going to go right into whatever the fear is and fully experience it emotionally. The worst of the worst. The worst things that I can, if something triggers me, that means it's there. It's always on 24/7. It's affecting my reality, whether I like it or not, or whether I acknowledge it or not. And I want to unpack that thing and I want to release it. So I've done a lot of releasing and there's still things down there to unpack and there will be, but that has made my vibration go higher, which makes it easier to get into channeling. That was a very long answer, but it's a complex thing.
No, it's so good. During COVID, I started a morning meditation class, so 6 days a week, and it was never scripted. I didn't call it channeling, but for me, it was connecting with God, like connecting to the Holy Spirit. And I would just sit in contemplation, like you said, in meditation and prayer, and just quiet and just say, what's the message today? What is it that you want me to share with folks? And then by doing that myself for probably at least like half an hour that morning, doing, the practices that I did that allowed me to then be the vessel, right? To be able to do that every day. And it was a different message. It was a different playlist. It was like a different breath pattern. It was something different all the time. But I know that if I did not prepare, like you said, there's no way I could jump out of bed and just start doing it, because then it becomes about us. Then it's like, what are we thinking? And it becomes more about that ego versus allowing ourselves to connect and be able to share what is coming through us for the greater good of those that are paying attention. So I think it sounds like it's a similar practice that you have as well in order to be able to channel and to allow the stream to come through you. And the other thing I thought was really interesting, yeah, it's if you go back to so much of scripture is very mystical, and it's really talks about faith, and it talks about the fruits of the spirit, which are hope and gratitude and love. All of these things, as you say, is higher vibration that comes through. But I think that we overcomplicate a lot, and we start to create as humans a lot of rules that takes the focus away from the overall message. So it's interesting. I love that you brought that up, because I think sometimes our brains want to say, is this wrong? Is this okay? How does this align or doesn't align to the belief systems that I have or how I was raised? So I'm curious if you have had experiences even with your own faith as you continue to allow yourself to become this vessel and continue to share more with others. Like, how have you changed in terms of your belief in whatever it is that you believe in?
This has been a very long journey for me because I was raised in Christianity. I was raised Methodist. And then my family, my mother essentially and some aunts and uncles sort of defected and they went over. I lived in a small town in the South and pretty much church is everything. And most people were Baptists. And the two biggest buildings in town were the First Methodist Church and the First Baptist Church. The First Baptist Church was much bigger. And my family sort of started defecting over to the First Baptist Church. I'm not even sure exactly why, but around the time I was a teenager. And those two religions, even though they're both Christian, were very different. And so that
Mm-hmm.
created some confusion for me. The Methodist
Yeah.
church was sort of like ceremonial and beautiful. We had this beautiful Gothic sanctuary, and I was really into the youth group. It was very beneficial to me as a youth with a father not present and a mentally ill mother who openly hated me. That's another story for another day. But the youth group was a really good thing for me at that those formative years that I could have been out developing a drug addiction or robbing banks or whatever. I was in the youth group at church. So it was a really good thing for me. And then when I went to the Baptist church, it was just a very different experience. So that caused me to question religion.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I am a gay man, and that also caused me to question religion because I had this knowing that felt very loving and benevolent that
Mm-hmm.
and I was trying to pray that away with this knowing that I identified as God. And it was very clear to me, you're perfect the way that you are. Don't listen to anything anybody's saying. You've got to love yourself and be the way that you are. And all of the judgment and the rules and all of those things, all of that is human created noise. Like you said, source, God. I say source because I think when I say God, a lot of people that are in our audience think that I'm talking religious rules.
Sure. Of
I
course.
say they're interchangeable, and if you wanna call it whatever you wanna call it, it's fine. That is flowing to me the way it flows to everyone, and then I'm able
Mhm.
to get information from that and share it in a way that I call channeling and we call the stream. I don't
Yeah.
say I channel God. I do say I channel source consciousness, but it's source consciousness, so that's important to point out. And so for me, it's evolved over the years where, for a minute, I identified as an atheist. I tried to pretend like I didn't believe in anything. That was my late teens, early 20s. That didn't work very long at all because there was something there that was like, nope, that's not true. Here we are.
Yeah.
And so I have just always identified that for a while. It was definitely something spiritual, spirit guides,
Mhm.
relatives. I think that all of that is in my stream. And I've evolved now to where I just kind of blanket, like you said, the universe, source, God, it's all very simple. We are the ones that make things. I say it all the time. I loved it when you said that. We make things complicated, and it's like we have to make things complicated to give them power. People will listen to they don't anymore, but when I first started channeling, people would say, "Well, where's the science proving this?"
Yeah.
And we would say, "Go prove it to yourself. Why wait for a scientist to prove or disprove something that really exists in everything? They may never be able to prove or disprove it, but apply it, see if it works. If it works and you're aligned with it, if it feels right, do more."
Yeah.
Right?
I love that.
So that is really my focus now is source is all of it. And I just call it source. I listen to that guidance. It's never led me wrong. People that experience it and listen to it and apply it tell me constantly. I hear every day from people that say, this has changed my life. It's amazing information. I love it. And that's just what I do now. And it is as simple as that. And even
No.
Tya is a lovely practice. We created 4 pillars that we can operate our lives on that really do align you with source, and I love that, and it's in the book and it's out there. But when we start focusing on commercializing Tya, it started turning into something. It didn't have dogma. I've never done that, but it started turning into something that wasn't the stream or source anymore, and that's why I just stopped doing it and said, "I'm just gonna channel from now on." I'm
Yeah.
not worried about anybody's experience or outcome. I'm going to share this. And if you're into it, you'll show up, you'll experience it. If you like it, you'll experience it as often as you want. Step away, come back, whatever you want to do. That feels so good to me in comparison to some of the things that I've dabbled in over this last near decade of sharing this is just letting go. Here it is. Here's what it is. Be into it or not. It's completely fine. And that's exactly what they say.
Yeah. No, and everybody needs hope right now. Everybody needs to be able to feel like when the world is spinning out of control, when there's so much going on that is really hard, just to remind us that there is hope, that there is, as you said, coming back to a place of appreciation, of gratitude. So if folks are listening and they need more of that, what is the best way that they can find you and all the ways that they could work with you?
The best way to find me is just the website, davidstrickel.com, Strickel is our website. And the way that I work these days, we do bi-weekly live transmissions every other Saturday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific. I go on live. You go on my website, you get a ticket to that, you show up, or you can subscribe to it and be at every one and share the stream for 2 hours. There's no agenda, there's no script. The only intention is just to have a lifting, helpful interaction for the audience that is participating. They bring their questions, the stream answers, and then we provide a replay after that. If they want to go back and listen, they have access to that. That I do session work. I do private session work. I've always done that. If it gets filled up, I take it off the website. When it's available, we put it on. I do private sessions. And then we have a mastermind community for people that are really into it and want to join a mastermind of people from around the world that are going deep with the stream and participating on a quarterly basis. So you're showing up a few times in these group meetings. I have that as well. So that's the way that I work with people. And then we have the podcast, which is my name also. All of that is on davidstrickel.com.
And you also have 2 books that are available. We'll include links to those as well. When did you write the first book?
The first book was published in 2018, and that is my journey to channeling, a much more detailed version of what I shared here,
Yeah.
what the stream is and how I became to channel it, and a lot of information about they shared a lot. I channel in that book. The second book had even more channeling. The second book is the Tya Practice, which it took me 5 years to write that book based on what I was teaching in the academy at the time. I ran across a lot of people who did not have the funds for high ticket coaching. That's the world I was in at that time. And so I wrote the book so that anybody would have access to it, that could get a book or use book or, whatever, and have the full practice. The full practice is in the book. The whole thing is there. So we did that, and I always like to say I have a couple more books in me yet, but I take a long time to write a book, so it'll be a while before another one's out. And that one was published in 2023, the end of 2023. So it's been out for a couple of years.
Okay, wonderful. We'll include all those links. And David, I ask everybody the same question at the end, which is what does it mean to you to live the width of your life?
Yeah, I'm sure I've already answered this in here, but I will be more specific. The width of my life is just allowing the vibrational flow that comes through and acknowledging how wonderful source and high vibration is and how wonderful it is to channel that, but also seeing the value in the low vibration stuff, what's in the basement, because that's how you really up level your life is unpacking that basement and not being afraid of what's down there or what may happen in the future. The detuning of fear is the most powerful thing any human can do.
So, so good. David, thank you so much for joining me today and just continued success to you as you continue to bring such light in the world and helping people, maybe those especially who are struggling and don't have a lot of hope, to be able to be reminded that the world is still a beautiful place and we are all still connected. So, thank you.
Indeed, it is. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for listening, everyone.